The Lost Hero is the first book in the Heroes of Olympus series by Riordan. It is also a sequel to the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series. Today, I'm going to be reviewing this book and giving my thoughts on it. But before we start, I had to give a spoiler warning for those who haven't finished The Lost Hero. With that out of the way, let's get started. Personally, I'd rate this book a 4.5 out of 5. It was a fun read, and I'd recommend it to anyone who has finished the Percy Jackson series. But even if it was a fun read, this in my opinion is my least favorite book in the Heroes of Olympus series, and you'll find out why throughout the video. In this book, we follow three demigods named Jason, Piper, and Leo. And when I mean demigods, I mean people who has a godly parent and a mortal parent. Because of their demigod abilities, ADHD, and dyslexia, they get kicked out of schools and are often placed in camps for weird kids. The book has three perspectives, each are one for the three demigods. Our story starts with Jason's perspective. He wakes up with absolutely no memory about his life or who he is, and he is holding hands with Piper in a school bus. Their bus stops and Gleason Hedge, their school coach, guides them into the Grand Canyon. There, they are attacked by a person named Dylan. Dylan was a classmate who was flirting with Piper, but in reality he was a Ventus in disguise. A Ventus or a storm spirit are creatures of chaos that Aeolus, the wind god, keeps locked away in the hollows of his island. They are able to defeat him, but Coach Hedge was taken, and that's the start of the adventure. Personally, when we started the book with Jason, I was a bit taken aback because the main reason why I wanted to read The Lost Hero was because of Percy. When I went to the first chapter, I was confused to see Jason's name because I didn't remember him from the original series. Everything changed, however, when Annabeth Chase, Percy's girlfriend, came in the scene and said that Percy was missing. Another thing I was shocked about was the writing style. In Percy Jackson, it was written in first-person perspective, but in The Lost Hero, it was written in third-person perspective. I had to admit that the writing style matured a lot, but there were times when I wanted it to be Percy's point of view because of the humor he always had. When starting the series, I already had a hunch that it would center on another prophecy, specifically the prophecy of Seven, which was revealed in the last Percy Jackson book, The Last Olympian. The new oracle, Rachel Elizabeth there, said the prophecy as soon as Apollo blessed her, and I was intrigued by it. I wanted to know what it was, or if that meant another adventure would happen, but I wasn't able to get a copy of the Heroes of Olympus, so I wasn't able to read it after finishing The Last Olympian. Like Percy Jackson, the adventure starts with a quest, and the quest of the Lost Hero was to free Hera from an evil snow goddess named Keone in a place called the Wolf House. In Percy Jackson, Cronus, an evil titan and the father of the first Olympians, rose to power and wanted to destroy the god's kingdom called Mount Olympus. In The Lost Hero, the stakes went higher when Gaia, a primordial goddess, started to wake up. Gaia is worse than Cronus because she's the most powerful being ever to exist after chaos, the black nothingness. Gaia is the earth goddess, and I mean the literal earth. She was born long before the gods even existed, and she's the mother of the titans. Keone, a couple of titans, giants, and other creatures from Tartarus teamed up to wake her so that they'll rule the world. In order for Gaia to fully wake, they had to use a god's power, and that's why Hera was kidnapped. Even though it seems impossible to defeat Gaia, the prophecy of Seven, the one I mentioned earlier, told of 7 half-bloods that will cause her defeat. And this is the prophecy. 7 half-bloods shall answer the call. To storm or fire the world must fall. An oath to keep to the final breath, and foes bear arms to the doors of death. In this book, the 7 demigods aren't complete, but it is clear that Jason, Piper, and Leo are part of it. Going to Camp Half-Blood after the Dylan attack, I met some pretty familiar faces and names from the original series came popping up. Some of these were Selena Bjurgård and Charles Beckendorf. I had to admit, I was a bit emotional when I read Selena and Charles's names, because what happened to them was heartbreaking, but I'm not going to elaborate more because of spoilers. In camp, the 3 demigods are claimed by their godly parents. Leo is claimed by Hephaestus, the craftsman god, Piper is claimed by Aphrodite, the love goddess, and Jason is claimed by Jupiter, the Roman counterpart of Zeus, the god of thunder. Leo being claimed by Hephaestus wasn't that much of a shock for me, because it is seen in the wilderness school that Leo can invent stuff. I have expected Piper to be claimed by Aphrodite because Jason noted that she was beautiful and her eye color changed once in a while. Jason being claimed by the Roman counterpart of Zeus, however, had me confused. In Percy Jackson, they always refer to the gods in their Greek forms and never say or actually mention the Roman counterparts. Another revelation that shocked me was that Thalia Grace, a daughter of Zeus and the lieutenant of the Hunters of Artemis, was actually Jason's sister. She was a friend of Percy's in the original series. Another weird thing happened. Jason suddenly has this tattoo on his arm that says SPQR. He speaks Latin, refers to the gods in their Roman form rather than their Greek form, and I was starting to suspect that something was up about the Romans in this series. So the trio starts the quest and rides in this bronze dragon who Leo named Festus. Festus used to be a malfunctioning dragon that Charles Beckendorf used in the book The Demigod Files. Festus has been deactivated for years because it tried to kill everything on its path, but Leo was able to fix him. They use him as a ride throughout this quest, and they enter the palace of Boreas, the god of the north wind, and that's when they meet Chione. I know I mentioned her being one of the people behind Hera's kidnapping, but I was deceived when I first read about her. I honestly didn't think that she would mingle with that kind of stuff. Sure, she was a bit rude, but I didn't expect her to be evil. Jason and Piper ask Boreas about Dylan the Ventus, and Boreas reveals that he was working for Gaia. Throughout their journey, they overcome numerous obstacles and eventually manages to save Coach Hedge and also meet Thalia and the Hunters, who have also been looking for Percy. They then go to Mount Diablo, and they defeat this giant named Enceladus, who's been sending Piper dream messages about her dad, Tristan Mclean, getting kidnapped. I had to admit that when Piper gave the potion to her dad to make him forget everything about being kidnapped, it made me really sad for her and I sorta cried, but I knew Piper did it for the best because her dad was really traumatized by the whole experience. My most favorite part of the book would be the Battle of the Wolf House with Chione and Gaia's forces. I loved how everything was played in this scene. It was so action-packed. Another thing we have to talk about is the cliffhanger. The cliffhanger concerned Percy's whereabouts, and that made me want to pick up the next book, The Son of Neptune. After they rescued Hera, we learned that Hera actually erased Jason's memories to unite the two camps. These two camps were Camp Half-Blood and Camp Jupiter. Camp Jupiter is a Roman camp where Jason belonged, and Hera was also responsible for Percy's disappearance. She erased his memories too, and placed him in Camp Jupiter. She wanted to unite these two camps so that they'll fight together against Gaia. Before, both Roman and Greek demigods were allies and best friends, but some sort of conflict happened and a huge civil war occurred that ended up with a lot of bloodshed, and that's why the gods separated them into two camps, one for Roman demigods and one for Greek demigods. This book was an amazing read, but there were times when it was quite slow, and sometimes it felt a bit monotonous. Like first, they set off a quest, then later they get attacked by this monster, then they're safe, then they get attacked again, and so on. It was as if it was a bit fixed on that kind of setup, so I kept dropping it rather than continuously reading it for more. This is the reason why The Lost Hero is my least favorite Rick Riordan book. It was slow, and in some places, nothing that much happens aside from threatening dream messages from each demigod. I still enjoyed it overall, and I even grew close to Jason, Piper, and Leo throughout the whole adventure. Now, I'll be answering the question, is it a worth it sequel to Percy Jackson? In my opinion, yes, it is a worth it sequel. This book received many mixed reviews. Some are for praising the book, and some for disliking the book. The Lost Hero is an adventure-packed sequel with a chilling cliffhanger, and this will remain as a book I will always love. How about you? What are your opinions on The Lost Hero? Let me know in the comments down below.